Adolf Hitler left an indelible mark on mankind. His Nazi empire caused mass suffering, decimated the population of Europe, and brought the Holocaust to the 20th century. Hitler can be demonized, worshipped, caricatured, or mocked. But like everybody else, he was a human being prone to illness and disease. His illnesses don't explain his ideology, nor excuse it, but they can give us an insight into his state of mind and allow us to look at the past in a different way. This virtual room will regenerate the body of Adolf Hitler, so we can get inside the man we've come to think of as a monster. This is the body of Adolf Hitler. When the Second World War started, Adolf Hitler was at the peak of Nazi glory. The Führer had delivered to the German people the beginnings of the 1,000-year Reich he'd promised them.
He identified himself, his own body, with Germany.
From the outside, Hitler seems superhuman, just as he liked to regard his Nazi master race. But Hitler had secrets about his body that he was keeping from the German people.
When you think of Hitler, you often think of a man who's very strong, a very forthright leader. But actually, when you start to uncover the surface, he was quite a frail man.
By the time he reached his 50s, Hitler had stomach problems, failing eyesight, coronary sclerosis, and Parkinson's disease. On top of that, he was taking drugs, including amphetamines.
You don't make the most rational decisions when you're stoked up with speed.
Hitler's illnesses and the drugs he was taking changed the course of World War II. How did his body reach such a state? Braunau is a picturesque riverside village on the Austrian border. This is the apartment block where Adolf Hitler is born at Easter 1889. It's a difficult birth, but Adolf survives. His mother, Clara, had already had 3 children before Adolf, but they died young, 2 of them with diphtheria. When Adolf is 10, he and his younger brother Edmund both catch measles.
A rare complication of measles is an inflammation of the brain, or an encephalitis, and this is probably what Edmund had. And certainly at the end of the 19th century, such a swelling of the brain may well have been fatal.
Adolf survives the disease, but Edmund dies. To Clara, Adolf's survival is a small miracle. She dotes on him. But when Adolf is 18, Clara dies of breast cancer. Adolf witnesses his mother's painful death. By the time he becomes an adult, death has been a common occurrence in the Hitler household. Hitler may even fear an early death himself. In 1908, Hitler moves to Vienna, where he lives the life of a bohemian artist. He wears a fashionable Kaiser moustache and spends time painting landscapes and buildings. But Vienna has a dark side. Syphilis is rife among the prostitutes. It is alleged Hitler caught the disease while staying here.
Syphilis is a sexually transmitted infection that's due to a bacteria, and certainly in the early 20th century it was extremely common, and in a city like Vienna where there was a lot of prostitution, syphilis would have been endemic amongst the brothels. You contract syphilis by coming into contact with the sores or lesions of syphilis, particularly if somebody has just caught the infection, and often the sores are located in the genital area or they can be in the mouth, so obviously through sex it's very easy to pick up the infection.
But the deadliest effects of syphilis are only felt much later in life. If Hitler had caught syphilis, the bacteria would be waiting like a time bomb inside him. In February 1914, Hitler receives his call-up papers for the army and faces his first full medical. But the military doctor finds him to be in very poor shape. His verdict is unfit for full or limited duty, too weak and unfit to bear arms. This is the Odeonplatz in Munich. It's August 1914, and Germany has just declared war on Russia and Serbia. The crowd cheers. Hitler is a face in this crowd, jubilant at the prospect of war. He writes and insists that he's allowed to fight for Germany. His wish is granted. Hitler is allowed to join the German army.
He was posted to the List Regiment, a Bavarian regiment, went to the front and served for the whole of the time, in fact, as a runner. He was constantly under fire and running backwards and forwards, carrying messages to and fro between the various headquarters and the front lines, and there's certainly no intimation that he was anything other than a brave man.
It's in the trenches where Hitler's body suffers its first major injury. October 1916. Hitler is resting in a dugout with his comrades. An enemy shell lands nearby and rips through the dugout, killing several of the men around him. Lance Corporal Hitler is blasted by shrapnel in the left thigh.
One of the principal structures in the thigh is the femoral artery, and this is the major blood vessel that carries blood down into the leg. And because it's an artery, that blood is actually under pressure. Now, if the shrapnel actually damaged the femoral artery, that could actually have been a fatal injury due to blood loss.
Once again, Hitler survives. A change in the shrapnel's position, and 20th century history might be different. Bielitz Hospital, just outside Berlin, where many of Germany's wounded are sent to recuperate. Hitler's one of them. In the ward, he hears injured soldiers bragging about self-inflicted wounds and working out ways to avoid returning to the front. It sickens him.
To see other soldiers there relaxing and not being focused on the battle which was going on outside would for him feel like a betrayal.
He was absolutely incensed by people who he felt weren't enthusiastic about it, people who were defeatist in any way.
Not only is Hitler a nationalist, he's an idealist too. The defeat of Germany is unthinkable.
He identified himself, his own body, with Germany. If Germany was defeated, then he would be defeated, and defeat was an imperfection.
As soon as he can, Hitler rejoins his old regiment. But the nature of the war is changing. The age of chemical warfare has begun. By the final year of the war, 1 in 4 artillery shells fired contains poison gas.
Both sides used gas in the First World War. Both sides, I think, claimed that the others used it first. I think it's generally accepted that the Germans did first of all, but it doesn't excuse the thing in the end.
By the war's end, there'll be over 1 million casualties from gas alone. In October 1918, Hitler falls victim to a mustard gas attack.
Mustard gas was known as a vesicant because it caused blisters, vesicles. If it got into the eyes, it would cause blistering around the eyelids and in the membranes of the eye, which could be very painful. The only thing you can do for mustard gas poisoning is to wash the gas away as quickly as you can. In other words, irrigate all the surfaces that have been exposed to the gas.
Hitler is temporarily blinded and gets treatment in a field hospital. But in November 1918 comes the news that devastates Hitler. Germany has surrendered. Hitler vows to create a new, stronger Germany. He enters the political arena. One of the first things he does is change the way he looks.
Hitler's physical transformation, his shaving off his Kaiser Wilhelm mustache and putting on a much shorter mustache, is something which we often see among people who are grieving. They will go ahead and cut their hair or shave their heads, for example. If he was grieving for that part of territory that Germany was lost, and if he was almost literally identifying his mustache with Germany, then he had a much smaller mustache. Germany was much smaller, and now Hitler's mustache was much smaller.
By 1923, with unemployment and inflation raging across Germany, Hitler decides it's time to seize power. He stages an armed rebellion, which came to be known as the Munich Putsch.
The putsch came to a nasty end, of course, when they were faced by the troops, who did, in fact, open fire. He was arm in arm with a man called Richter, who was a great friend and supporter. Hitler, as a well-trained or experienced front-line soldier, as soon as the first shot came, threw himself down, hit the deck. And because they were arm in arm, as he went down, Hitler dislocated his shoulder. I was convinced that he'd been shot in the shoulder. I was in a terrible state about it.
In the furious gun battle that followed, 14 rebels and 4 policemen are killed. The man Hitler is linking arms with has been shot dead. Hitler is seriously injured.
If your shoulder were to become dislocated by the arm being basically wrenched out of the socket, the first thing you'd experience is extreme pain. It can actually sometimes damage the nerves that run through the armpit. So, and these are the nerves that will supply the arm.
For his part in the putsch, Hitler is arrested and sentenced to 5 years in Landsberg prison. He uses his time to write a memoir and manifesto that he calls Mein Kampf, My Struggle.